he was stuck behind a locked door. So he was in his room locked in.
Okay, that sounds logical. He was a hero.
Right.
She's a crazy bitch.
Guess whose pocket they found that key in?
Don't tell me. Let me guess.
Yeah, so it's like, look, lady, nice story and all, but...
You be tripping.
Right. So, she was quickly released after this, but then Paul went missing in August of 1891. So he sticks his neck out for her, gets her out of prison, and then some sources did say it was 1893. Again, the record keeping is not that great. Sorry, folks, if you hear the waves a boat just went through.
It's so delightful.
It's really pretty.
Let's pause.
And we're back, and I have a bug in my hair. Sorry. So, Lizzie claimed that Paul was traveling when the police came knocking on her door, but the neighbors really weren't buying the story, so they called in the police again. So on September 4th, the police came to the house with a search warrant in hand, and they found way more than they would bargain for. So when they arrived on the property, they found 2 bodies buried in hay in the barn. Upon further investigation, it was found that the 2 bodies were females, and they were those of Margaret and Sarah McQuillan, the family that she went and found after her first husband.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, she's hardcore.
Yeah, and...
I mean, what is she getting from killing all these people? What is she getting? Is she taking their money, or...
That's what I was wondering, because, I mean...
Or is it just the simple thrill of killing people?
I'm wondering if it was just thrill at that point, because they didn't have any beef with her. They took her in and things like that. So maybe they just came for a visit and she got pissed off or something, but...
Wow.
So they were actually considered New York residents and part of the McQuillan family that resided in Philly. So maybe they just came up for a visit again. I don't know. So a few days after that discovery, police found Paul's mutilated body under the floorboards of his home.
Wow.
His cause of death was a gunshot wound, and upon these discoveries, she was charged with murder and arrested. She was, her trial took place in Sullivan County out in Monticello, New York, and her murderous rampage would not end there. But we'll get into that because that's part of after she's in jail.
Okay.
So she was convicted. It's rumored that she became upset with the charge. So she became erratic and stripped her clothes from her body. She began speaking in tongues.
Okay, well, you know what? She showed them. She got naked.
The cops were like, yeah, whatever, and they brought her to the station.
Sounds like the police today. It's like, can you imagine the stuff that they've seen? I know, just talking to Frank, that some of the things he's seen. How do you not react?
Well, that was like that day. Remember they had the mad flasher? They're like, there's a guy by the park, and he's flashing kids.
Oh my God.
That was on the radio when we were at your house. Because that's what I said, Frank, what's going on? And he's like, some guy is flashing people in the park.
On the scanner,
yeah.
He's like, nothing phases him.
And then I'm just like, who would want to touch him? Because if I were him, I'd be like, I'm naked, you're not going to touch me. And they're like, we don't care.
I remember a story he told me when he was on the job, and he told me that he pulled a car over for going through a red light. When he got up to the car, the girl was completely naked. And I was like, oh my God, what did you do? What did you say? And he said, I asked her for her license and registration. I mean, and he's looking at me like, what are you asking me that for?
And then I gave her a ticket.
He said, and I gave her a ticket. And I said, you gave her, you didn't tell her to get clothes on? He goes, no, I'm not. I don't react to that.
I say once she gets out of the car, then she's got public indecency.
Like, I would be like, you already know that. I'm very emotional. I show everything.
Well, I couldn't hide it. My face says everything.
What the hell are you doing? Cover that beaver up.
Honey, are you out your mind? Like, what are you doing?
Your beaver's showing.
And your titties, girl. Cover up. Nobody wants to see that.
Well, I'm sure there's people that want to, but still, I digress.
So Lizzie pulled to that girl. She just like starts throwing a fit on the front lawn. So, and they felt that she was feigning insanity to escape the charges. So I'm like, they totally saw through it. It's like a kid that just got in trouble, and they're like, I'm just gonna cry, like you hurt my feelings.
Yeah, they're not standing there in a clown costume.
Right. So,
These are trained professionals. They've been through everything.
and back then, I mean, I'm sure they saw some stuff. You know what I mean? So,
I'm sure.
like, this bitch is crazy. Like, all right, just get in the car. We don't care. Here's a blanket, cover up, because we don't want your ass cheeks on our seat. So while she was in custody, she refused to eat the first few months.
First few months.
Yeah, well, she obviously didn't.
I was going to say, how did she not eat?
Yeah, well, you can go longer without food than you can without water. So maybe she needed a cleanse. I don't know, but she ended up eating because she didn't die. So then she attacked the sheriff's wife. She set fire to her own bed. She tried hanging herself and even attempted to cut her own throat with a piece of glass. So now she does all this, and now she's restrained. So it's like, really, sweetheart?
I don't mean to laugh, but she is grasping at straws now.
Right. So at that point, she was changed to the floor in her cell for the remaining months. So on June 21st, 1894, she was convicted at the Sullivan County Oyer and Terminer Court for the murder of Margaret and James McQuillan. She was sentenced to death by electrocution. She would actually be the first woman in New York State history to be sentenced to the electric chair. But we had a weak governor at the time. Roswell
We have one of them now.
Roswell P. Flower commuted her sentence to life in a mental institution. So this was after she had been declared legally insane by the medical commission. So I guess they had a board of folks that were like, yeah, this bitch is crazy and we're just going to put her in the insane asylum. So they actually sent her to the Mattawan State Hospital for the criminally insane. And she spent the rest of her life in this facility. So despite how she behaved on the outside, she was not a model prisoner. She attempted to escape several times, attacked many prison workers, but eventually she gained the trust of one of the nurse at the jail. Her name was Nellie Wicks. So, so after...
I think something bad's going to happen to her.
Yeah.
Oh.
So she actually she gained trust after getting friendly with Nellie, so she was actually allowed to use like sewing instruments and scissors. So she was friendly with the prison nurse, and then in 1906, Lizzie used those scissors to stab Wicks to death.
I know it.
Would you like to take a guess at how many times she stabbed her?
50.
200 times.
Was she afraid she wasn't going to die, so she just kept stabbing her? Poor
Apparently.
thing.
So Nellie, and the reason for this attack was that Nellie told Lizzie she was switching jobs. When you told me you were leaving, I was upset.
I'm glad you didn't stab me to death. I was upset too. I've never wanted to stab somebody.
No, that's what I was like.
That's wow.
Yeah. So I'm like that's like
She's
that's
in the place she needs to be.
Yeah, I think that's a little. I think they deem that overkill.
I think so.
Yeah, 200 times. So she actually died on June 28th in 1918. So she did a good chunk of time. So she died in Mattawan, and she was about 42 years old, but she had a kidney disease that was incurable. I couldn't pronounce the name, so I didn't write it down. But yeah, she had this this incurable illness.
Or did they just get so sick of her shit they stabbed her 200 times?
Maybe. I can't believe that. You lose count after a while.
I mean, I guess that's what the coroner can tell by the...
And what if... And then I'm like, did they give her, like, those paper scissors?
Oh, like the Fisk scissors?
Yeah.
The little children
So, like,
get?
they just have, like, the little blade on them?
Anything can be a weapon.
Right.
Because I was thinking when you were talking, what could she have used instead of a needle? They could have let her crochet, and they could have used a cardboard hook. Like,
Oh, like you put the cardboard on the... Yeah, because those... I've been hooked by my crochet needles.
I don't crochet.
I'm not very good at it.
You make blankets, though.
I use the cheater yarn.
So, still doing it.
I haven't touched it.
Lauren did one, and it cost her like $80.
It's very expensive.
I was like, nah, I'm good.
I have some I have to return, actually. So, yeah, that was Crazy Lizzie Halliday, one of New York's
Wow.
first women serial
I
killers.
dare say, after all the serial killers we've done podcasts on, I think that she might have been the most brutal.
Yeah, and there's so many questions I have, like, why did she kill those people? And how were they related to the McQuillans? Were they the daughters? Were they, you know what I mean?
And why? Why would you do something like that? Or there's just no reason if you're insane.
Right. So that's why I'm like, I like these old-timey ones, but there's not a lot of info on them. So it's like, you know, I don't know. There's not a lot of info. And I even went in for next week's. I did, I went through, because we have our New York Times thing, and they have old things. So I was looking up the old stories about.
That's cool. I know you like the old ones.
Well, this one's a fun, this is I guess a cryptid / lake monster.
Okay.
I'm very excited because I've been on this lake.
Okay.
And we're going to take a road trip because I want to go looking just to see if we can see him.
That would be so fun.
We can take a ferry ride.
So one time when my sister and her ex were up on Lake Champlain, they had their boat on it, and that's like hundreds of feet deep.
How about you save that story for next week? Because that's who I'm doing.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, I'll save it.
Champ the lake monster.
All right, I'll save it. Sorry, everybody. Kelly killed my joy.
Buzzkill. Yeah, so I'm going to do the Lake Champlain monster. Because my grandfather used to take us up in the summer times, usually around this time. We would drive to the Vermont side of the lake, and then we would take the ferry back to the New York side.
Neat.
So it was fun. And then you could buy all like the Champ merchandise and stuff like that. So I was reading my cryptozoology book, and I was like, oh, I forgot all about Champ. So I figured we'd do something fun because we've been doing a lot of bummers lately. So
yeah, well, they're definitely not always a happy subject, but they're helpful.
And that one's kind of a nice little filler too, because I'm going to be doing a pretty lengthy case coming up on the Dyatlov Pass, so I'm very excited about that, and it's actually got connections to my favorite Disney movie,
Frozen.
Mm-hmm. I'm so excited.
That's kind of odd.
It is, but it's very cool. So that might be a two-parter because there's a lot of moving parts to it, and it's a lot to break down and digest because the deaths are pretty bizarre. I'm very excited. I'm sorry. I won't get ahead of myself.
And right now I'm working on a lot of different cases, so I can't say which one is going to be next, but I'm working on Lemuel Smith. He's the guy that killed the prison guard.
Oh, yes.
And a bunch of other people. And I'm also starting to work on another missing persons case. And FYI, if you didn't catch our last week's episode on missing baby Arden, I urge you to listen to that. It could be the difference between this not being solved and it being solved. So I appreciate if you just take a listen.
Yep, and there's all kinds of links for the resources because the family does need help. There was a search done last weekend, and they did find a piece of the river that they need to explore more, but they need more resources to be able to, because it's a tricky part of the river to get down into. So if you want to listen or help out, we have all the links under that episode. But you can also find us on Shiny Things Podcast on Facebook, at Shiny Things Pod 1 on Twitter, at Shiny Things Podcast on Instagram, And you can always send us an email at shinythingspodcast@gmail.com. You can share stories with us if you've had any true crime, run-ins with cryptids, just any kind of interesting story. We like to hear from you guys. Other than that,